Good morning, guys. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir. Good
Yes,
morning.
sir. Yes.
My screen is also visible to all of you, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So from today onwards, we are going to start our collection framework, right? As part of a collection framework, we are basically going to discuss four things. First, we will discuss arrays because arrays is the first one, right? That is exist from our traditional programming languages like C, C++, and any programming language you take into consideration, you will find this concept array, right? After array, in .NET framework, there is something called as non-generic collections, right? Then once we discussed array, then we will discuss what are exactly non-generic collection in .NET framework. Once we discussed non-generic collections, then we will try to understand what is the advantages and disadvantages of non-generic collections, then how we can overcome those disadvantages, right, using collection framework, right? Once we discussed collection framework, then finally we will discuss what are concurrent collections. So basically, four things we are going to cover as part of a collection framework. One is your arrays, then we will discuss non-generic collections, then we will discuss generic collections, and then we will discuss concurrent collections, right? So today, basically, we are going to keep focus on arrays, right? Because arrays is very, very important. And as a developer, as a programmer, right? As a beginner, right? Whatever you may be, this concept is must. And it is not that difficult because or it is not new to any programming languages, right? In your academics you already learn this concept. So today we are going to keep focus on this concept called arrays, and tomorrow I'm going to discuss what are collections, generic and non-generic, all these things. So what we are going to discuss, so today we are going to discuss why we need arrays, what is an arrays, what are the different types of arrays, how the array is represented in the memory. We will discuss multiple examples to understand how you can create, initialize, reinitialize, right, one-dimensional array. Then we will discuss the difference between a for loop and a for each loop, right? Then we will discuss one special class called array class. Then we will discuss this array class having some methods, how you can use those methods, and finally, we'll discuss what is implicitly typed array. And once we discuss this concept, right, nine, then we will discuss what are two-dimensional or multi-dimensional array, how to create and use multi-dimensional array, right? And then we will discuss what is the advantages and the disadvantages of arrays and how we can overcome these disadvantages by using collection framework, right? With this, we'll conclude our today's session, right? So why we need arrays in programming language, right? See, we have already discussed the primitive data types, right? Primitive data types like suppose if okay, primitive data type like integer, right? Suppose integer x equals to 10, you can create boolean, right? Boolean b equals to false, right? You can create character ch equals to some cap letter, right? So these are nothing but your built-in data types, or you can say built-in primitive data type. And these data types, right, at any given point of time, they are going to hold a single value. That means x. X is a primitive data type of integer type. So at any given point of time, this variable x is going to hold a single value. So currently this variable x is hold 10. Later I can store the value 20, that is also fine. But once I update this x with 20, it means what? It means now it is holding the value 20, not the value 10. So at any given point of time, right, only a single value can be held by this primitive built-in data types, right? That is what I am mentioning here. As you know, primitive data type variables such as int, double bool can only hold a single value at any given point of time. For example, integer number equals to 10. Here variable number holds a value of 10. As per your business require, if you want to store 100 integer variables, then what you need to do? Suppose I currently I'm storing one number, right? I'm storing one number, I'm creating one variable number. But if you want to store 100 numbers, then what you need to do? You need to create 100 variable like this. Number one, right? Like number one, number two, number three, number four. Like this, you can create 100 integer variables. Yes or no? So you can create 100 integer variables to hold 100 values, right? Then you need to create 100 integer variables in your program, which is not a good programming approach, as it will take lots of time as well as your code becomes bigger. See, so if you are going to create 100 variables, then it will take more time or not? Your program size will be increased or not?
Yes.
Yes or no? That means if you are going to create 100 variables, then the time will be increased, the program size will be increased. So we need to find a better solution. What is that solution? So we can overcome this problem by using the concept called arrays. And arrays are not new in C#. They are existing in other programming languages such as C, C++, Java. Using arrays, instead of creating 100 variables to hold 100 values, we can create a single variable which can hold 100 values. So instead of creating variables like this, what I can do is I can create a single variable, right? Let's say numbers array, right? So where I can store 100 values, right? Now here you can store 10, 20, right? 10, 20, 30, like 100 variables you can store. So instead of creating 100 variables to store 100 values, so I can create a single variable where I can store 100 values. This is the use of arrays in programming languages, and for this reason we are going to use arrays. So instead, if you want to store similar type of multiple values as per your business requirement, you have two options. You can create many number of variables with the same data type, right? For example, if you want to store 100 integer values, then you need to create 100 integer variables like this, which not only take more time, right? But also it will increase your program code, right? The size of the program is going to be bigger. So instead of creating 100 variables of the same data type to store 100 values, right? So what I can do is I can create an array where I can store the similar type of 100 values. Similar type means here you can only store integer type of values. You cannot store other data type values, right? So similar type of values you can store under a single name if you are using the concept called array. Is that clear? Why we need arrays? Yes.
Yes.
So this
Yes,
is
sir.
Yes, sir.
so if someone asks you why we need arrays, then you have to answer these things. Right? You have to give one example, and you can give this right now. Now, what is an array? we understand. We understand why we need an array, but we need to understand what is an array. The array is defined as a collection of similar data elements. In this case, this array, it is nothing but a collection. Collection means multiple data item, and multiple data item, all those data items going to be of similar type. So in this case, if I'm trying to store a string value, it will immediately give me one error. You can see I'm getting one error. Why? Because you are creating the array as integer type, so you cannot store string value. So if you are creating an array of integer type, that means you can only store integer value. Other than integer is not acceptable, right? So what is an array? Array means it is a collection of similar type of data elements which is going to be stored under a single name in a contiguous manner, right? How it is going to store in the memory, that we will also see. If you have some set of integer, right, or some set of floats, right, some set of integers or some set of floats, then you can group them under one name as an array. So in simple words, we can define an array as a collection of similar type of values that are stored in a contiguous memory location under a single name, right? So if you are creating an array of integer or array of a float, that means they are going to be stored in a contiguous memory location under a single name. And as it is an array of integer, you can store only similar type of a data. If you are creating an array of a string, then you can only store string value. If you are creating an array of a character, means you can only store character data type. If you are creating an array of a float, means you can store only floating type values. An array is a kind of a sequential data structure which is used to store the collection of items of the same data type. That is what we have discussed. I'm sure you didn't get this definition. Let us understand this. Okay, let us understand array from layman's point of view. Okay, we already learned that variables are used to store values, right? But a variable can hold only a single value of a specific data type at any given point in time. For a better understanding, please have a look at the below example. So here you can say I'm creating one variable which is holding the value 10, right? This is the value. Then I'm updating this variable location with 5, means this memory location is replaced by 5. That means at any point of time, this X memory location is going to hold a single value. It is not possible to store 10 and 5 both the values inside this same memory location. Why? Because it is a primitive data type, and as it is a primitive data type, you cannot store multiple values, right? But in real-time programming, there will be a scenario where we need to store group of values, right? Okay, group of values, for example, suppose I want to store 10 employee information, 10 employee number I want to store in my application. Then what you need to do? You generally need to create a 10 integer variable, right? Employee number 1, number 2, like this up to 10. So in this way, you can create 10 integer variables, right? Where you can store this variable. But this is very bad programming practice, right? If the array kind of data structure is not there, then the programming would be a bit more complex, and it should be like this. If array is not there, then you have to write the program like this. For everything, we need to define a new variable, even if it is of the same data type. But let us see how this problem is resolved. And to resolve this problem, what we need to do, we need to create an array like this, right? So once you create an array like this, then all these integer numbers are going to be stored under the same name in a contiguous manner, right? How using this angular bracket work in a real-time memory? Suppose you are creating the statement like this. Suppose you create one array, right? Employee number array, where you store 5 integer values. Then how this is going to be represented in the memory? In the memory, right? It will be stored like this, contiguous manner, right? In the first memory location, in the first address, it is going to store 1. It is a sequential, right? The order in which you are storing the data, in the same order it is going to store in the memory. So this is the first memory address where 1 is going to be stored. In the second memory address, 2 is going to be stored. In the third memory address, 3 is going to be stored, and so on. And guys, remember, array is zero-based index. Zero-based index means what? That the first memory address, the first memory location is going to be addressed by the zero index based, right? First memory means the index position is 0. The second memory means the index position is 1. Third memory means the index position is going to be 2, and so on. That means if the array contains 10 elements, right, then the first index position is going to be 0, and the last index position is going to be 10 minus 1, and that is 9. That means it will start from 0 and it will end nothing but the size of the array minus 1. In this case, the size of the array is 5, so the last index position going to be 4. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now we are going to discuss what are the different types of array. We'll come to this practical implementation of this thing again. But before that, we just need to understand what are the different types of arrays supported in .NET Framework. One is single dimensional array, and one is multi-dimensional array. Single dimensional array means the data is represented in a sequential order, right? In single dimensional array, the data is arranged in the form of rows. Rows means the data is stored in this format only. in this format 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 like this. And in multi-dimensional array the data is arranged in the form of rows and columns, right? How is it going to be stored in the form of rows and columns? So once you discuss multi-dimensional array, after once you complete one dimensional array, then I will explain that, right? How it is going to be stored in inside the memory, right? What is the format of rows and columns, right? Everything we are going to discuss in detail. Again, this multi-dimensional array is classified into two types. One is jagged array, right? And another is rectangular array. Jagged array means where each rows and columns are going to be different, and rectangular array means each row and columns are going to be equal, right? Well, so coming to your point, we will discuss this thing in detail, right? This multi-dimensional array, what is jagged array, what is rectangular array, we'll discuss this thing in detail once we complete this single dimensional array. So this is the reason why I'm not explaining this part right now. This multi-dimensional array I'm not explaining right. We can access the value of an array using the index position, where the array index start from 0, right? So we have already discussed the array index is going to be start from 0, and the last index of the array is nothing but the size of the array or the number of elements present in the array minus 1, right? So today now we are going to keep focus on single dimensional array, right? Now we are going to focus on single dimensional array, then we will discuss multi-dimensional array in detail, right? How to declare an array in C#, right? Declaring an array in C# is very easy. So what you need to follow? You need to write the data type. After the data type, you need to provide the square bracket. Then you need to provide the variable name. Then you need to write the new. Then you need to specify the data type, and then you need to specify the size of the array. In other programming languages, you might be see they are providing the size here, but this is not applicable in .NET framework. In .NET framework, this part should not contain the size of the data type. The other part, which is created using the new, right, new keyword, there you need to mention the size of the data type. Or other thing is also possible at the same line. You can also initialize using some variables. That is also we are going to see. But first of all, you need to understand this one. So how the array is created means data type, square bracket, right, open and close square bracket, variable name, new, data type, size of the array. For example, integer a equals to new int 5. That means here the name of the array is a and the size of the array is going to be 5. So in this case, what it will do? So in this case, what it will do? It will allocate 5 integer, right? It will allocate 5 integer memory allocations, right? Where the name is going to be a and the index position is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Understand? And in this case, right, the index is going to be start from 0 and the last index is going to be 4. Why? Because the size of the array is 5, means it can contain, you can access these 5 elements by using the index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? And in this case, if you are not assigning any value in this statement, we are only creating the array. We are not assigning any values to these memory locations. So if you are not assigning any value to these memory locations, right, then what it will do? It will store the default values of the data type. And we know what is the default value of an integer. The default value of integer is 0. So by default, it will fill these memory locations using the value 0. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now let's assume integer take 2 bytes. Let's assume integer take 2 bytes. So, okay, so integer actually takes 4 bytes, but let's assume for our convenience, for our understanding, integer take 2 bytes. If integer take 2 bytes, then this memory location, the first memory location will be the first byte is 300 and 301. So this memory location is 300 and 301. The second memory location address is going to be 300, 200, 303. The third memory location address is going to be 304 and 305, and so on. So the point that you need to remember is this is a contiguous memory location. It should not like this memory address is 1, this one is a different one. It should be the next immediate memory address, right? So this is the reason why you might be knowing that the array is a contiguous memory location. Why contiguous memory location? Because the memory allocated in a contiguous manner, right? So you can see a of 0. So a of 0 means here this 0 is nothing but your index position. So a of 0 means this index position or this a of 0 will pointing to a memory location whose address is 300 and 301, right? 300 and 301. Similarly, a of 1 is taking what? 302 and 303. Similarly, a of 2 is taking 303 and 304 and so on. That means this is the memory allocation is going to be in a contiguous manner. So how many bytes it is consuming in total? In this case, it is consuming 10 bytes of memory allocation. 10 bytes of memory. Why? Now each location is taking 2 bytes and there are 5 memory location. So 5 into 2 is nothing but a 10 bytes of memory location is consumed by this array. Clear or not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So other see in this case you can see I'm directly assigning the value 5. I'm doing the hard coded value, but you can also initialize this memory location by using a variable. So I'm creating a variable with the size 5, then I can initialize this memory. I can pass that variable to this data type, right? Even you can take this value from the user, right, by taking from the console application, and once you take the value, you can create an array with that size also. This is also possible. Now we know how to create an array, right? In this statement, we are using the new operator to create an array, right? But other options are also available, right? See, we have already discussed this concept, right? So here I'm creating integer x, right? And I'm writing x equals to 10. This is applicable or not? Is there any issue with the above two statement? And is there any difference between these three statements? In this statement, I'm creating the variable, then I'm initializing the variable. And in this statement, I'm creating and initializing the variable at the same statement. Any question from these two things?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No.
Right? So in previous example, we have declared, we have only created the variable. In this case, we have only created the array variable, but it is also possible that you can create and initialize the array variable at the same line. So in this case, you can see what I'm doing. I'm simply writing this statement. So I'm simply writing this statement. So what is exactly happening in this case? In this case, based on the argument values, it will create the array with the required size. Based on the argument values, but based on the right hand side values, right, it will create an array with the required size. That means in this case, this array A is created with how many size, or what is the size of this array? So this size of this array will be decided by the number of arguments that you are storing. So these are nothing but the values or argument you can consider. As you are trying to store 5 integer values, the size of this array is going to be what? 5 only.
5.
Right? So you can create an array like this, right? Suppose I'm creating integer b equals to new integer. I can store like this. So in this case, you can store the values like this, 0 equals to 1, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3. So we'll come to this indexing, but for now I'm just showing you 2, 3 how to access the array elements. I will show you, but for now, see here I'm creating an array and then I'm initializing each location. So b of 0, b of 0 means which location? Let's assume the array is b. B of 0 means this location. This location I'm initializing with 0. B of 2, b of 2 means b of index position 2. This location I'm initializing with this value. So this statement I have written like this. In this case, we are creating a variable, array variable with the size 5 and initializing each location with the values. And the same thing what I'm showing here, this is exactly the same thing. In this case also, internally it is going to create an array with size 5 and to the location, to the index position from 0 to 4, it is going to store these 5 elements, right? So in this case, I'm creating and initializing the array at the same time. And in this case, I'm creating the array and initializing the array elements are separate. Is that clear, guys?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Right. So in this case, we need to understand while we are using array, right? How we can access the array elements. The answer is by using indexes, right? So we need to understand what are indexes, right? The index of an array is basically a pointer that is used to indicate, right, which element in the array will be used. For example, right, the sequential starting is 0 to n minus 1, where n is nothing but your element or the size of the array. You can access any element in the array using the index. For example, let's see, this is your array. In this array, okay, this statement will create one array with size 5, and these 5 elements are going to be stored in the index position 0 to 4. So this is 0 position, this is first position, this is second, third, and fourth, right? This you can see. If you want to access this memory location, then how you will access? Now you have to use the variable name, which in this case employee number. Then you need to use this square bracket, and within this square bracket, you need to specify the index position. So what is the index position of this memory location 0? What is the index position of this memory location 1? What is the index position of this memory location 2? What is the index position 3? And for this location 4. Now, if you know the index position, then if I will ask you, please retrieve the value 3 from the array. So you know this is the value, and you know the index position of this element is true. Then if what you will need, what you can do is you need to write like this: employee number of 2. So in this case, it will going to return me the value 3, right? And if you want to access the value 4, then what you need to do, you have to use employee number of 3 like this. Array index is an integer, and always remember this index position. What I'm showing, this index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 means it is of type integer only, which is going to start from 0, and the last index is the number of elements or array size minus 1. You can use the index to set and get the element of an array. Not only you can see in this case, I'm setting the value of array. And also I can get the value of array. Suppose I'm writing here console dot write line, right? So I'm writing console dot write line. I can print like this. So here I'm getting the value, and here I'm setting the value. So using this index position, you not only set the value of the array elements of the array in memory location, but also you can paste the value from the memory location, right? So this is what you need to remember. And the memory representation of array is like this. If you are creating an array of like this, then this is what it will be represented in the memory. So this is your data, where this 17, 23, 4, whatever values that are going to be stored. This is nothing but your index position, which is started from 0 and end with the 9. And this is your lower bound, and this is your upper bound. So using this index position and using this array name and index position, you can access any elements from the array. Is that clear, guys?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Right. Now what we'll do, we'll try to understand how to assign values to an array. See, if you are writing the statement like this, integer n equals to 1, 2, 3. In this case, we are not only declaring, but we are assigning values to the array at the same statement, thus initializing it, right? So this statement is nothing but your declaration as well as initialization. But when you create a variable like this, integer n equals to new int like this, suppose in this case, if you are creating a variable like this, it is only declaring, right? This is what declaration plus initialize,
right? This is declaration. This is only declaring, and these are nothing but your initialization, right? So in this case, you are declaring and initializing. In this case, this is only declaration. Then you need to initialize them separately by using the index position. This is what I'm showing here. So it is something like if you are initializing 0, 1, 2, so it is something like you are creating 3 variable and initializing all the 3 variables, right? So in this case, it is suppose I'm creating an integer of size 5, right? And I'm initializing this. So this statement is also nothing but it's like n1, n2, n3, n4, n5, and then I'm initializing the n1 equals to 1, n2 equals to 2, right? n3 equals to 3, n4 equals to 4, and n5 equals to 5. So in this case, what I'm doing, I'm creating 5 variables and initializing these 5 variables. And guys, one right? So in this case, you can see I'm creating 5 variables and initializing those 5 variables. And this is exactly the same as this one. So in this case, instead of creating 5 variables, I'm creating 1 variable. And by using the index position, I can store 5 elements like this, right? Behind the scene, 5 variables are created. Here also 5 memory locations are created. The size of this 5 variable and size of this array is going to be same. The only difference is that these 5 variables can be created at any place, right? They are not going to be stored in the conjugated manner. But in this case, all these 5 locations are going to be created in a contiguous manner. And to access this value, we need separate variable. And here, by using the same variable and using the index position, we can access all the elements, right? This is what I'm showing here, right? So you can see declaring an array and initializing the array element, right? So you can also create an array of a float, right? So here I'm creating an integer array. If you want to create, you can create a float array like this, right? So this is going to be a float array whose size is 3. And in this array, you can only store floating point numbers, right? So how to, is there any question related to how we can create an array, how we can initialize an array, right? You can create an array like this, right? You can declare and you can initialize the elements like this. You can also declare and initialize at the statement, same statement like this. But what is the problem in this statement? You have to do the hard-coded values, right? Here you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 means these are the hard-coded value. But if you want to take the input from the user, right, then you should not you should not do the array initialization like this. In that case, what you need to do, you need to write like this, and then at runtime, what you need to do, you need to do something like convert dot to int 32, and you can take the input from the user like console dot readline. Right. So in this case, whatever the input the user will enter, that will be stored inside this variable, right? Inside this memory location, right? But this is not possible by using this statement, right? So if you are declaring and initializing the array at the same time, means you are providing the hard-coded value. And if you want to go for a dynamic value or user given values, right? Then in that case, you need to go with this syntax. Is that clear? Guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Then how to access the array elements? We have already discussed, right? If you are having one array like this, right, by using the array name and index position, you can access the array elements, right? So you can see this is nothing but your array name, and by using the index position, array name and index position, you can not only set the value, but also you can access the element like this, right? And in this case, if I am printing the value of a name, then right? So in this case, do you think that in this case, if I'm writing b of 2, then it will print the value 3, right? It will print the value 3. But if I'm writing like this, b then what it will print? Do you think that it will print all the array elements? Guys, no, it will not
Correct.
print. It will not print the array elements. What it will print? It will print the type of this variable, right? What is system dot int static. So that is what it is going to print. It will not print all the elements. Rather, it will print the type of this variable. That is system dot int. Then can we use a for each loop, right? For each loop to iterate on an array, right? Can we use a for each loop to iterate over an array? Yes. Since the arrays in C# are derived from system.array class, right? Whatever array you created, they are going to be derived, right, internally from the system.array class. If you go to the definition of this, then you will see this is an abstract class, and this abstract class is inherited from I clonable, I list, I collection, and I enumerable, right? And as this is inherited from I enumerable, so we can use for each loop to iterate on an array. So what is and how, we'll see this practically, right? Now, I hope you understand what is an array, how to create an array, and how to initialize an array, how to access the elements of an array. It's time to proceed and see some examples, right? So before proceeding, first keep this picture on your mind. This is the syntax, right? Type. This is operator. This is open and close square bracket, name, new data type, size. This is the syntax of array creation. You can create an array like this, integer new int 5. You can split this declaration into two parts, like integer array 1 equals to new int, right? Or you can create and initialize the array at the same statement like this. And in this case, based on the argument, number of arguments, the array will be created accordingly, right? So if the array number of argument is 5, then the array is going to be created with the size 5. And in this case, if you are initializing the array with the argument values, then no need to use the new keyword, right? But if you are not initializing, then it is mandatory to use the new keyword, because we know new keyword is basically to allocate the memory, right? So this new keyword will allocate 5 memory locations, right, of integer type. But in this case, new is not required. That will be taken care internally by the compiler. Compiler will create 5 memory locations, or you can say the number of elements. If there is 2 elements, 2 memory location. If there are 10 elements, then 10 memory location will be created by the compiler internally. With this keep in mind, let us try to understand some examples. Right? So here I'm creating and initializing an array of an integer, and this array is having 3 elements. So what will be the size of this array? Guys?
3.
3. Then if I want to access this element, then what I need to do? Numbers of what is the index position of 10?
0.
What is the
0.
index position of 30?
2.
2.
2. That means individually you can access the array element by using the name and the index position like this. Any question? Clear?
No, good. Clear.
Accessing the array elements using a for loop, right? So what I'm doing, I'm creating a for loop which is going to start from 0, right? And in this case, numbers length minus 1. What is this length? How I can access this length property using the numbers array is because this length property is available inside the array class, right? If you go to the array class, then you will see that there is a property called the length, right? Which will return me the length of the array, get the total number of elements in all the dimension of the system.array, right? So in this case, the total number of elements is what? 3. Right? So numbers that length will return me 3, but I want to access the element using the index position, which is going to start from 0. Then this loop should continue till the length minus 1. Clear? And then I'm increasing the I element. And in this case, what I'm trying to do, I'm also doing the same thing here. I have hard coded the 0, 1, 2, but in this case, the loop will execute till the last element that is available in your array. Clear? This for loop is Clear or any question how this for loop is going to work?
That is clear. Simple.
So even though you can use this for loop, but as a .NET developer, we are not interested. We are not very interested for this for loop while we are accessing the element, right? For I'm saying while we are accessing the element, I never feel good to use for loop because I'm not interested to declare a loop variable. I am not interested to provide the condition, right? I'm not interested to increase and decrease all these things. I'm always interested of using for each loop, right? So what I'm doing now in the case of for each loop, you just need to hand over your collection to this for each loop, right? This is
Okay.
nothing but your collection, and I'm providing this collection to this for each loop, and here I'm writing integer number. Why? This numbers variable, this numbers is a collection of integer type. So I'm writing integer number in number. So what you will do, he will fetch the element sequentially from the first element to the last element, and he will hand over that element to this variable. If there are 3 elements, this for loop will execute, or for each loop will execute for 3 times. First, it will provide this value 10 to this number variable. It will execute the for loop. Second time, it will provide this 20 to this number variable. Then it will execute the loop. Then it will provide 30 to this number variable, and then it will execute this loop, right? So you now you can feel which one is better, whether you should go with this approach or whether you should go with this approach. Both approaches are existing, and it is up to you. So in this case, but there is a lot of difference between for loop and for each loop. That is also we are going to discuss, right? So for now, what I'm trying to show you is I'm accessing the element separately by using the index position like this. I'm accessing the array elements by using the for loop, and I'm also accessing the array by using the for each loop. Any question from anyone? How this things are happening? How for loop and for loop works with the array?
No.
See, you can see number 0, 1, 2, it is printing 10, 20, 30. Number 0, 1, 2, it is printing 10, 20, 30. And in this case, it is printing 10, 20, and 30. Clear? Or any question from anyone? This is clear, right?
Yes.
Okay. So now let us proceed and see a few more examples. Okay, this is example 2, and in this example, what I'm trying to show you is 2 things, right? So I'm creating an array. So in this case, this array is created, but I have not initialized the array. So if I'm not initializing this array, then what is the default value it is going to store inside those 3 memory locations? Can anybody tell me?
0, 0.
0, because the integer data type, the data type's default value is 0. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating an array with size 3. I'm only declaring the array, not initializing. So before initialization, I'm using a for each loop to print the default values. This is the for each loop what we have used in our previous example, the same, right? Then what I'm doing here is I'm initializing the array elements by using the index position. So numbers 0, numbers 1, and numbers 2, right? So numbers 0 means it will initialize the first memory location. 1 means second memory location. 2 means the third memory location, right? So by using the index position, I'm initializing the 3 memory locations, right? After initializing the memory locations, then I'm again printing the values, right? So you can see again I'm using a for each loop and I'm printing the value. So in this case, you will see before initialization, it should print the values as 0. And after initialization, it will print the respected value, what we set, right? See, 0, 0, 0, 10, 20, and 30. Any question from this example? Guys, clear or any question? Guys?
Yeah, it is clear.
Yeah. Okay. Now we are going to see another example, right? Dynamically, how you can create the array, right? So in this case, I'm creating an integer array with size 3, and I'm first of all I'm displaying the default values, right? So what is the default value? In this case, it should print 0, right? So in this case, okay. So I'm writing some logic to initialize, but what I'm going to do is I'm changing this logic, right? I'm changing this logic. Enter array element, right? So what I'm trying to do is I'm commenting these two statements. What I'm writing, convert dot to int 32. I'm taking the input from the user, right? What is the class name? Console dot readline. I'm taking the input from the array elements, right? Then what I'm trying to do is entered array element, right? So here I'm taking the input from the user and storing these elements inside the array, and then simply I'm printing the elements, right? Okay. Right. So you can see, so in this case, this array will execute for 3 times. And the first time the array value are this I equals to 0. This is, you can consider this is the index variable, right? Index position. First, I will store the input in the 0th position, then 1, then 2, right? Each time I'm initializing that memory location, I'm taking the input from the user, right? Now run the application. Right? So by default 000 is printed. Now I'm going to enter some array element. I place 10, enter, 20, enter, 45, enter. You can see entered array elements are 10, 20, and 45. So you can dynamically also create an array like this. Any question from this example? Guys?
No.
No.
Right. So what is for each loop? So we are using one loop called for each loop. What is this? The for each loop is specifically designed in C# for accessing the values of a collection like array, array list, etc. See, if you are having a collection, right? Then if you want to access the element from that collection, right? If you want to access all the elements from that collection, then you need to use the specially designed for each loop. When we use a for each loop for accessing the values of an array or collection, we only require to hand over the array or a collection to the loop, which doesn't require any initialization condition and iteration, right? So in this case, you can see this is the for loop. In for loop, you required a initialization, you require condition, you require this increment and decrement operator. But in the case of for each loop, you do not require this thing initialization, condition, and iteration. You do not need to initialize any variable like this. You do not need to provide condition like this. You do not need to set the condition for the iteration, right? What you only require, you only need to provide that collection to this variable I. And this variable I is going to be the type of this integer array data type. What is the data type? Integer, right? So this variable I should be of integer data type. But in this case, this I is always going to be of integer data type, irrespective of the array, right? Whether you create an integer array, whether you create a string array, whether you create a Boolean array, this is always going to be of integer type. Why? Because it is pointing to the index position, right? And index position are 0, 1, 2, 3 like this, which is nothing but your integer type. And in this case, it is not your index position. In this case, what is this variable? It is the variable which is going to hold the value, right? If the value is of integer type, then you need an integer variable. If the value is of string type, then you need a string variable, right? That is what you need to understand. And this is the difference between the loop and the for each loop. See, in the case of a for loop, the loop variable refers to the index of an array, right? In this case, this loop variable I will point to the index position of the array right? Whereas in the case of a for each loop, the loop variable refers to the values of the array. In this case, it is refers to the values of the array. Okay, so to simplify this, what I can do is I'm going to give you this example. See, currently I'm creating an array of string, right? What is the array? Array type is string. So in this case, I'm accessing all the elements using for loop, and also I'm accessing all the elements using for each loop. Even though the array type is string, my index variable is going to be, my loop variable is going to be integer. Why? Because this loop variable is pointing to the index position, that is 0, 1, and 2. But coming to the for each loop, this loop variable is not going to be the integer type, because this variable is going to hold the values what is there inside the countries, right? This India and USA, UK, this variable are going to be stored inside this variable. This is the reason why you can see I'm creating the variable as a string type. It is not pointing to the index position, rather it is directly holding this value. And in this case, this I is going to be pointing to the index position. Understand or not? Guys?
Yeah, yeah, correct.
Okay. So this is the difference. So irrespective of value stored in the array, the loop variable must be of int type in the case of a for loop. The reason for this is here loop variable is referring to the index position of the array. Coming to the for each loop, the data type of the loop variable must be same as the type of the value stored in the array, right? For example, you can see this is the example here. The array is of string type. So here the index variable, the loop variable is integer, and here the loop variable is string. It is integer because it is pointing to the index position. It is of string type because it is directly pointing to the value. This is the difference between array and this is the difference between for and for each loop. Another difference is that using for loop, you can set the values, right? In our previous example, you can see, right? So, okay, let me, using this for loop, I'm also setting the value of this array elements or not. Using the for loop, you can set or you can store the array elements, but using for each loop, this is not possible. This is not possible using for each loop. Why? Because in this case, this I is not pointing to the index position. Rather, this I is the actual value, right? If you do not know the index position, then how you can set the value? If you do not know the index position, then do you think that you are going to set the value? No. So using this for loop, you can set your elements of an array, but this thing is not possible in the case of a for each loop. Using for each loop, you can only access the array element, but you cannot set the array element. Is that clear?
Yes.
Clear
Yes.
or not?
Yes, clear.
Right? So this is the difference between this and this, right? What happens if you are trying to access an element whose index is bound to, out of the bound? I mean what? You mean you create an array with some index, right? Right? 3. 3 means what is the index position? The index position is going to be from 0 to what? 3 or 2?
2.
2.
Right? Because if the size of the array is 3, means the index position is going to be 0 to 2. And if you are trying to set the value in the index position, which index number is 3, then in that case, index position 3 is exist in this array or not?
No,
No.
In that case, you will get one. Right? In
out
that
of
case,
bound.
an exception saying in the array index is out of bound. Right? Let me run the application and you can see what exception it is showing. It is showing index was outside the bounds of the array, index out of range and exception. So while not only while setting the value, right, at the time of getting the value, if you are trying to access one array element whose index is not present, right, outside the bound of the array, then you will also get the same index out of bound or index out of range exception. right? So this is the thing that you need to take care. That means array, once you created, the size is fixed. You cannot increase and decrease the size. And hence, if you are trying to access one element, right, which index is not present, then you will get this exception, right? That is fine. Now we are going to discuss the array class, right? We have discussed that by default, every array, right? Every array, what you created is inherited from this array class. Then what is the advantages of using this array class? Provides methods. This array class provides methods for creating, manipulating, searching, sorting arrays, thereby serving as the base class for all arrays in the common language runtime. That means this is the base class for all the arrays that you are created in your application. Whether you create an integer array, character array, floating point array, the base class is going to be this array class. And this array class provides some functionality. Using those functionality, you can create an array, you can manipulate an array, you can implement the sorting functionality, you can implement the searching functionality, right? All these things you can implement it on array by using this array class, right? And you can see it is an abstract class. So you cannot create an instance of this class, but this class provides some functions, right? You can use those functions to implement some functionality, right? So that is what we are going to discuss. So the common functionality we have discussed, one functionality is length. So this is a property. When you call this property on an array, then it is going to return me the dimensions of the array, the number of elements present in all dimensions. So total number of elements in all dimensions of the array. So in one dimensional array, there is only one dimension. So in that dimension, how many number of elements are there? That will be written by this length property. But if you coming to multi-dimensional array, right, that means there are more than one dimensional, right? Then what is the total number of elements present? That will be written by the length property. That is what we are going to discuss once we start discussing the multi-dimensional array. For now, we are only keep focusing on single dimensional array. So how many number of elements are there? That will be written by this length property. And this get length method means it is also a method which is going to return the number of elements in of a particular dimension, right? You can see integer 0. Suppose you are creating a two-dimensional array. Two-dimensional array means there are two dimensions. So what is the number of elements present in first dimension? What is the number of element is going to is present in the second dimension? That number of elements is going to be written by the get length property, right? And this copy method is basically used to copy the elements from an existing array to a new array. Suppose you are having one existing array with 10 elements and you want to copy out of 10, you want to copy 5 elements into a new array. Then you need to provide the source array, you need to provide the destination array, and here you need to provide the number of elements that you want to copy. This reverse method is basically going to reverse the array elements. If you are storing the elements 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then it will reverse the array elements like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And this sort method is basically used to sort the elements in ascending order, right? So sort the elements in ascending order means what? If you are having some elements in descending order, then it will sort them in the ascending order. And if you want a descending order, then on the sort element, on the sorted array, you need to call this reverse method, which will reverse the array elements. So now let us see one example to understand all those methods. All right, so you can see I'm creating one array which is storing 10 integer numbers, right? So the size of the array is going to be 10, right? So the size of the array is going to be 10. And see, these elements are not in any sorted order, right? These elements, the elements are stored in a random order, right? So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm using a for loop, right? And I'm printing the elements, right? So here you can see array position is going to start from 0, and hence it is looping the array till the array length, right? Array length. So if you are using this is fine. So okay, let me So array index is started from 0 and it will come until the 9th element, right? So as soon as I becomes 10, this condition will become false. If you are confused, sir, previously we are using something called the length minus 1, then in that case I'm using this one, right? So any approach you can use, I less than number start length, or you can write I less than equals to number length minus 1. So whatever approach you like, use. You can use. Previously I used this one, now I'm going to use this one. So this is my original array elements, that is what I'm printing. Now after the original array, what I'm trying to do, I'm going to sort the numbers array. So in this array, I'm going to sort the elements. So to sort the elements, what you need to do, you need to call this sort method. And if you go to the array class, you will see that this sort method is a static class. And this sort method is belongs to which this sort method is a static method, and this sort method is belongs to this array class. So as it is a static method, so you need to call that method by using the class name. And to this method, you need to pass the array which you want to sort, right? I'm passing this numbers array, and after passing this numbers array, this sort method will sort the elements in ascending order. So you will see first 1, 3, 9, 1, 3, 4, 9, like this. So here I'm printing the sorted array elements. After calling the sort method, I'm just printing the array elements, right? And if you want the array element in reverse order, then you just need to call the reverse method on the array class, and you need to provide the array. So now the array elements are going to be in stored in the reverse order, right? So then I'm printing the array elements in reverse order. So here you will see the elements in ascending order, and here you will see the elements in descending order, right? Now I'm creating a new array, new numbers array, whose size is going to be 10. And then what I'm trying to do is I'm just copying the first 5 elements, right? Numbers, new numbers. This is my source array. From this array, I'm copying the number into this array. But how many elements? 5 elements. And the rest 5 element will take the default value. And what is the default value of this data type? The default value of this data type is going to be 0. And then I'm printing the elements of the new array. Again, on the new array, if you want to sort, if you want to reverse, all these things, those are also available. Then I'm using this length property and get length property, right? So you can see this length property is going to return me the number of elements present in the array, and get length of 0 means the first dimension. So as it is a one-dimensional array, so the number of so the data elements are going to be stored in the row format, right? One-dimensional array means the data is going to be stored in a row format. Multi-dimensional array means row and a column. If you want to know the length of the row, then you have to pass 0. If you want to know the length of the column, then you need to pass 1. But in this case, in the case of single dimensional array, there is no concept of column, so only rows are there. So you have to pass 0. This will return me the length of the array, right? So now let me run the application. See the output. This is my original array, which is store the array elements in the random order. After calling the sort method, you can see the array elements in ascending order. After calling the reverse method, whatever the array elements, it will print the elements in the reverse order. You can see the new array elements. It is taking the first 5 elements 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 96, 59, 30, 27, and you can see the rest 5 elements is filled with the value 0. And what is the length of the new array? It is going to return me 10, both length property and get length method. Any question from this example? Guys?
No, sir.
Okay, fine. Now we are going to discuss one concept called the implicitly array, right? Implicitly array in the sense, as of now, you can see I'm declaring the array with the data type, right? You can see I'm declaring the array using the data type. So instead of this built-in data type, if I'm creating the array using the var keyword, then it is going to be a implicitly typed array. Implicitly typed array means what? Now, based on the data type, right? Based on the argument values, it is going to decide the data type. And in this case, it is mandatory to use this new, right? Suppose in this case, I'm creating this numbers 1, right? And if I'm using integer, then it is going to throw me one error, because in this case, you cannot use this new while you are providing the argument values. This is not possible, because here you are explicitly specifying the data type. No need to use this new keyword. But in this case, right? So once I remove this, then okay, so you need to make this as an array, right? So this is also going to give you the same error. So this is not possible, right? So you have to specify this, and then this is going to be work, but this is not required, right? If you are removing this, then it is also fine. But in this case, right? But in this case, I'm creating a variable. I'm not specifying any TypeScript operator, nothing. I'm not specifying nothing. Then if I remove this, then it will give me compilation error. See, I'm getting the compilation of why cannot initialize an implicitly typed variable with an initializer. So what it means, you cannot initialize an implicitly typed variable by using this concept, right? So what is mandatory? You have to provide the new keyword. So in this case, it is going to create an array with size 5 of integer type. So now if you make now if you move your mouse pointer over to this number variable, you can see it is saying me integer array number. That means implicitly it is converting this array to integer type. So based on the data type, based on the values, right, it is going to decide the data type of this variable. And based on this, it's a new, and this operator, it is explicitly saying that this is going to be an array, and this array is going to be of integer data type. So you can see it is automatically converting this var numbers into integer array numbers. So this is nothing but your implicitly typed variable. Once you compile, this numbers is going to be an integer array of size 5, and the rest of the things are going to be same. You can do whatever you want. Right? Any question from this example? Any question from anyone? What is this implicitly typed variable? See, if I'm using
So one question here, like
variable x equals to 10, so in this case, this x is going to be a variable of integer data type, right? And here we do not need to specify this new array, because this new array is basically going to create a memory location of this data type of this variable, right? So it is going to be an array. If an array, you have to specify. If not an array, if it's a simple variable, no need to specify this thing. Directly it will consider this as an integer variable, you can see. But as it is not a integer variable, it is going to be an array, right? So you have to specify this thing, and based on this new keyword and based on these variables, right, values, it will decide the data type. Yeah, ask me your question.
yeah, this var keyword will only hold the primitive data types, or
No,
it
no,
also
no,
holds
no,
the
no.
object type?
No. Var keyword is basically going to hold the values what is there inside the right hand side, right? So based on the right hand side values, it will decide the data type. For example, I'm creating one class. I'm creating a class example. So in this case, this example is a class type or primitive data type.
It's a type.
So this is possible. So it is based on the right hand side values, it will decide the data type. So in this case, the right hand side variable is a example type. So you can see once you move the mouse pointer over here, it will showing that it is the var is replaced with the keyword example. So based on the right hand side values, the data type will be decided. The data type will be changed from var to the actual data type. So in this case, x is going to be 10. In this case, obj is going to be example, and in this case, numbers is going to be an integer array. Clear?
Yes.
Right. So
Yes,
this is all about your single dimensional array. now we are going to discuss multi-dimensional array, but before that, we need to take a break for 5 minutes. Is that fine?
Okay.
Right? Okay, so
Yes.
we will be back at 7:45.
Okay, sir.
Fine. Guys, all are back?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. right? So now we are going to discuss a two-dimensional array. So two-dimensional array, it is also you can consider as multi-dimensional array. So the array which store the elements in the form of a rows and the columns, you can see this is rows. You can see there are 3 rows, and in this case we are having 3 columns, right? In this example. So the array which store the elements in the form of a rows and columns, it is not necessary that the number of rows and the number of columns is going to be shown. So you can create an array with any size, any number of rows and any number of columns, right? If the array stores the elements in the form of rows and columns, then it is said to be a two-dimensional array. Two-dimensional array are also called as multi-dimensional array. And again, the two-dimensional array are of 2 types. One is rectangle array, another is jagged array. The array whose rows and columns are equal are called a rectangle array, right? And the array whose rows and columns are not equal called a jagged array. So we will discuss this jagged array once we discuss this rectangle array. Right now, let us try to understand this rectangular 2D array. A two-dimensional array is an array in which each element is referred by 2 indexes. Right. So in the case of a single dimensional array, right? In the case of single dimensional array, each element is referred by a single index. So this element is going to be referred by the index position 0. This element is going to be referred by the index position 2, right? So in case of a single dimensional array, each element is referred by a single index position. But in the case of a two-dimensional array, right, the element is going to be referred by 2 index position. The first index position, right? And guys, the two-dimensional array, it is, you can consider it is in the form of a matrix, right? Matrix means there should be some rows and there should be some column. The first index shows the row of the matrix, and the second index shows the column of the matrix. For example, if you are creating an array like this, so in this case, the syntax is like this: integer array matrix, new integer, and here previously you only need to specify the size of the array, that is the row size, right? But in this case, the data is going to be stored in the form of a row and a column. So first, the first index position, okay, the first parameter in this case, it is nothing but the row size, and the second parameter, it is nothing but the column size, right? So you can see I'm specifying the row size as 3. So you can see this is my first row, this is my second row, and this is my third row. And I'm also specifying the column size as 3. So you can see this is my first column, this is my second column, and this is my third column. And right, to access the elements, we need to use both the indexes. So in this particular location, right, for this particular location, this location is the 0th location, I mean 0th row location as well as 0th column location. That means if you want to access this particular location, which is pointed by my mouse pointer, you have to use 0 and 0, right? To access this location, this is the, okay, just tell me this is the row number 0 or row number 1 or row number 2. So index position means it is always going to be 0 based. So this row, this is the first row, which is going to be pointed by index position 0. This is the second row. You can refer by this row number 1, row index number 1. This is the third row, which you can identify by using the row index position 2. This is the first column, which you can identify by using the column index position 0. This is the second column, which you can identify using the column index position 1. And this is the third column, which you can identify by using the column index position 2. So this particular location, it is nothing but the 0th first row and first column, right? This is the first row and first column. So you can identify this particular location by using the index position 0 and 0. This is the third column and the third row, third column. So you need to specify this position, right? This memory location by using the index position 2 and 2. So this is the second, this is the third row and first column. So you can see the row position, row index number is going to be 2, and the column index position is going to be 0. And this is nothing but your, this is going to be your first row and the third column. So the row is going to be 0, and the third column means the index position is going to be 2. So guys, you understand how the 2D matrix or two-dimensional array is represented? Any question from anyone?
No question, clear.
Clear? Okay. Now, so once you understand this matrix, right, now you can easily understand the two-dimensional array. Suppose you create an array like this, right? So in this case, this 3 is nothing but your which size, row size or column size?
3 is row,
Oh,
And this 4 is nothing but your
column.
column size. That means if you are creating an array like this, so it will create an array whose size, whose row size is going to be 3 and column size is going to be 4. So it's basically a 3 into 4 matrix. You can consider 3 rows and 4 columns. You can see this is row number 0. I said this is row 1, row 2, and row 3. But as it is a 0 based, so this J, so here J is representing the row number. So 0 means it is pointing to the 0 index position pointing to the first row, 1 index position pointing to the second row, and 2 index position pointing to the third row. And the column is 4 means I is represented by column. So you can see this is the first column which is represented by the index position 0. Second column is pointed by index position 1 and so on. Now if I want to access this particular element, right, this particular memory location, just tell me what is the position, what is the row number and column number is required to access this particular position which is pointed by my mouse pointer. Can anybody tell me?
1,1.
1, 2.
1.
1, 1,
Why 2? This is the
no,
second.
1, 1, 1, 1. Sorry.
This column you can identify by using 1. So this you can access by using 1, 1. If I'm using 1, 2, then which is going to be 1, 2 means this is
That
the
one, next one. Yeah.
location, the next one, right? So this is how you can access the two-dimensional array. That means the point that you need to remember, if you want to access the element, then how many loops is required? One loop is for row number and another loop is for column number. So basically in single dimensional array, using a single loop, we can set and get the data, right? But in the case of a two-dimensional array, you need nested loop. You need 2 loops. One loop is pointing to your row address or row numbers, and another loop is pointing to your column number. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's see this one, right? Suppose and in this case the memory location is also going to be in a contiguous manner. Let's assume that it's an integer array, right? Integer two-dimensional array having 3 rows and 4 columns, and let's assume integer take 2 bytes. That means this memory location address is going to be 300 and 301. This is going to be 302 and 303. This is going to be 304 and 5 and so on. That means the memory addresses are going to be in contiguous manner, right? Understand or not?
Yes.
Yes.
But in memory, right, for a representation point of view, this is fine. But in reality, in picture, this is how represented in the memory. This is the row 1, this is row 2, and this is row 3. So whatever row is there, this thing is replaced here. The second row is going to be replaced here. The third row is going to be replaced here. But to access this element, you need the index position 0 and 0. You cannot access by using a of 0. Here, if you want to access this, you have to use 0, 0. To access this, you have to use 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3. To access this particular memory location, you have to use 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3. Sorry, 1, 0, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 2, 0, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3. Like this, you need to access. Even though it is a single dimensional array or multi-dimensional array, the memory allocation will be like this. But in the case of a single dimensional array, using a single index position, you can access the elements. But in the case of a multiple dimensional array, using multiple index position, you need to access the element. Is that clear? Clear or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, clear.
Okay. Now let us see what are the different ways that you can use to create and initialize a two-dimensional array. So here you can see I'm creating a two-dimensional array. While creating the two-dimensional array, I'm directly initializing the array. So in this case, this is nothing but your 259. This is nothing but your first row, and this set you can see open and close curly braces. Okay, let me take this to the new line, right? So in this case, right, this is nothing but your row number 1. This is nothing but your row number 2. And each row you are having how many columns? 3 columns. 3 elements means 3 columns, and the number of open and close curly braces indicates the number of rows. So in this case, this is my first row, this is my second row, and in each row there are 3 elements. So this array size is going to be what? How many rows?
2 rows,
And how many columns?
3 columns.
So this is what you need to understand, right? This is going to be 2 rows and 3 columns. If you want to access this element, what should be the size? What is the index position? Guys, tell me. If I want to access this particular element, what should be the index position?
0, 0.
0, 0.
0, 0, right? So if I'm writing
Yes,
0, 0, then it should print it 2 if our understanding is fine. Two is printed. That means our understanding is fine, right? So next, what is this? Okay, so even though you can also create a two-dimensional array like this. So this is one way, right? And another way is this one. So here you can also create the two-dimensional array like this, right? So here the same thing I have written, but here I'm specifying the size new int 2, 3. Right now, if I'm writing 2, 3, if I'm removing one element from here, it will give me a compile time error. Why? Because you have mentioned the column size is 3, means you have to specify 3 elements, right? So here you have to provide the third value also, right? So this is what you need to remember, right? So in this case, I remove another row. Again, it is going to give me error because array is saying array initializer of length 2 is expected, and I am providing only 1 row. It required 2 rows. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
So how to create and initialize at the same line? I will show you how to initialize separately, that we will discuss. So the different syntaxes is like this. Here you need to create the array like this, new type, and you have to specify the row size and the column size. Syntax is like this: integer array, new int 3, 4. You can split the declaration into 2 parts like this, and you can also create an array by initializing the values like this, right? This is the syntax of creating array. So now how to access the accessing the elements of a 2D array. Guys, 1 minute. So you can see this is my array. This is my two-dimensional array having 2 rows and 3 columns, right? And I want to access these elements, right? One of the way to access is by using this index position manually, right? Individually, you can write this 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 2 like this, and you can access. But if you want to access all the elements of this two-dimensional array, then as I mentioned earlier, how many loops I need to use?
Two
Two
loops,
loops.
One loop is for the row number, another loop is for the
column number.
right. So now you just tell me what is the row size.
Two.
Two loops.
So my if row size is 2, then what is the index position? 0 and
1.
One.
so the outer for loop is for accessing the rows. So I'm using I equals to 0, I less than 2 means this I variable here pointing to the row number, which row index position, which can be 0 and 1. Once the row this I value becomes 2, this loop will terminate. The outer loop is going to be terminated. Clear this one?
Yeah.
And we need another loop to access the column number, right? Column index position. And how many? What is the size of the column?
Three.
3. So I'm
Yes,
using j equals to 0. J less than 3 means what? The index position is going to be from 0 to 2. So this condition, what I have mentioned, it will loop through the value for 0. For the j value 0, 1, and 2, and once j value becomes 3, it will terminate the loop. So that means for I value 0, this loop, this internal for loop will execute how many times? For the outer I value 0, this internal loop will execute how many times?
3 times.
Right? And for the I value 1, again this loop will execute how many times?
3 times.
So the first time the loop execute, I value will be 0, and it will come inside the inner loop will execute, j value becomes 0. So the first time it will access 0 and 0. Then j value will become 1, then it will access 0, 1. Then j value becomes 2, then it will access 0 and 2. Once j value becomes 3, this inner for loop is going to be terminate. The outer for loop will increase its I value by 1, and again its value becomes 1, and the condition satisfied, it will come inside. Now again j value becomes 0 and I value is 1. So I value 1, 0, then I value 1, 1, then I value 1, 2. Like this, it will execute, and you can access the array elements. Is that clear? How these two loops are going working together to access all the array elements?
Yes, sir. Clear.
Right. Now let us see one example to understand this. Okay. So I'm creating one rectangle array whose size is 4 and 5. That means what? The number of row is
4.
and the number of column is
5.
5, right? And then I'm using a for each loop, right? I'm trying to print the value of I, right? I'm using this for each loop. I'm printing the value of I, right? Assigning values to the 2D array by using the nested. See, if you want to assign value, then you need to give it a nested for loop. Here, I'm not initializing the array with default value. I'm going to initialize it with some dynamic value, right? So this array, so here, get length of 0. So when I'm passing get length of 0, so it will give me the size of the row number. If I'm passing 1, it will give me the size of the column. So the 0 means the row number size, and get length of 1 means the size of the column. So in this case, it will give me 4.
4.
And in this case, 1 means it will give me the column size, which is nothing but 5, right? And then what I'm trying to do, I'm just creating a variable a, and each time this loop will execute, it will simply increase the value by 5, and that value I'm printing, I'm storing inside this rectangle array. Any difficulty in this logic? Right? If you are facing difficulty, then what I can do is, instead of rectangle.array 0, you can simply put 4. Here you can simply put 5. And the things that what we have explained in this example, this is the same thing here. Right? This is the same thing here. Right? Any question? So how this loop is going to execute, is that clear? Okay, if not
Yeah,
clear, let me
it's
put
clear.
the debugger point, right? I'm putting the debugger point. Let me run the application. Right? So initially you can see it is printing 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So how many 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Why 20? Because 4 rows and 5 columns. So the number of elements is nothing but rows into columns. So 4 into 5 equals to 20, right? Now what I'm trying to do is this loop is already executed. Oh, okay. Right. So in this case, I'm using get length and get length to set the value. And now this loop is going to execute. So what is the current I value? You can see it is
0.
0, right? So 0 is less than 4, condition satisfied. So it will come inside, right? Now, what is the J value? 0.
0.
Condition satisfied, it will print I and J. So what is the I and J? 0 and 0.
0.
In 0 and 0, what is stored? IP is stored, that will be printed, right? Then it will again execute the inner loop. So it will increment the J value by 1. So J value becomes 1 and condition is satisfied, right? 1 is less than 5. So it will continue the execution like this for J value 2, for J value 3, for J value 4. And once the J value becomes 5, now currently J value 5, this condition satisfies. So it will not execute this statement. It will come back to the outer for loop and it will increment the I value by 1 and again continue the inner loop, right? So let me, I value becomes 1, condition satisfied. Again, for I value 1, the loop is going to execute 5 times. So this is how the loop is going to be executed. Now, if you click on the continue button, then you will see the elements like this. Clear? Or any question from anyone?
Okay, 20 values.
Right, 20 values, because the two-dimensional array means the number of rows into number of columns. It's a rectangle array, but in the case of Jagstar array, the thing is going to be different, what we are going to discuss later, right? Is that clear? What is happening inside this for loop, internal for loop, outer for loop?
Yes,
And
sir.
this array of a 0 array, get length of 0 and get length of 1, what it is going to return? 0 means it is going to return the size of the row, and 1 means it is going to return the size of the column, right? Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. Now 2D array declaration and initialization at the same step. In this case, I'm declaring this array here, and by using a for loop, I'm initializing the array element. Now I'm going to show you one example, right, where I'm going to declare and initialize the array elements at the same statement. So in this case, I'm creating a number array, and here I'm storing some values. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So in storing some values. So in this case, can anybody tell me how many rows are there and how many columns are there?
3 rows, 4 columns.
That means the array size is going to be 3
3,
into
4.
4. Row size is going to be 3, column size is going to be 4, right? Printing array elements using for each loop. So you can simply use a for each loop. So what is the type of the data storing in this array? It's integer. You can hand over the data to int and print the values, right? Printing array elements using a nested for loop. Even though you can use a nested for loop, you can use this get length of 0, get length of 1 to get the length of the row and length of the column. Even you can, if you want, you can also hard coded the value, right? Like this. So you can print the data like this. So this is how you can use, you can initialize an array at the time of its declaration. The thing is going to be same. Any question from this one? Guys, clear?
Clear.
Okay. Now we are going to discuss one real-time example, right? Because if you are working with 2D array, then most of the time you will see that some people will ask you, can you implement the addition of a 2 matrix program? Can you implement the multiplication of a 2 matrix program like this, right? So now I'm going to show you how I can implement the addition of 2 matrices using 2-dimensional array. right? So what I'm trying to do, I'm taking the input from the user. I'm going to create a two-dimensional matrix by taking the input from the user. The user will now decide what is the row number and what is the column number. I'm taking two integer variable and I'm storing the row number and I'm storing the column number. Once you take the row number and column number, then using this row number and column number, I'm creating three matrices. This is matrix 1, this is matrix 2, and this is my result matrix. You can see all the matrices are having the same row number and column number, right? And what I'm going to do, I'm going to add these two matrices, whatever the result that I'm going to store inside this result matrix. Now I'm asking the user to enter the elements for matrix 1, and we already know how to do this. So first of all, this for loop is going to be used for your row number, and this for loop is going to be used for your column number. No need to use matrix 1 dot get length 0 and pass 0 pass 1, because we have already these two values inside these two variables, right? Directly you can use them as the condition. Then what I'm trying to do, I'm taking the input from the 0 and what is the I and the j index position. In that index position, I'm going to store the value. So in this case, I'm creating this for loop here. If you want, you can put this statement separately and okay, suppose you want to this, right? So in this case, what I'm providing a method called the create matrix, right? So in this case, I'm creating, instead of doing the same logic here, I'm using create matrix, and the same thing again here I'm going to call, and in this case I'm going to call this using matrix 2, right? So no need to duplicate the logic, right? So right, enter elements of second matrix and enter elements of a first matrix. So simply, instead of duplicating the logic, I have moved the logic to a different variable, and I'm just calling that method which will fill the element of my matrix. Right now, guys, you understand what I'm doing, guys?
Yes, sir.
What I have done, you understand how I'm creating this method?
Yeah, going through on that.
Okay, going to the refractor, right? So if you still, and let me show you once more, right? Suppose you have this code, right? This is a very useful thing, right? And you see that this piece of information, this piece of code, I'm using many times inside my method, right? That means what? I'm duplicating the logic, right? And here only the difference is that this matrix 1. Oh, right? So only difference is this matrix 1. So what I can do is I can put this code, select this quick action and the refactoring, click on this, you will see that extract method, click on this extract method and provide a name new method. So in this case, it is going to be matrix 1, right? And that matrix 1 is going to become to, so instead of matrix 1, let's give this as matrix, right? So give this as a matrix, right? This is what happening, right? So let me do some modification. Instead of matrix 1, I'm putting this as matrix. I'm changing this to matrix, right? And now, right now, what I need to, okay, I have done the changes here. Okay, let me give this name as matrix, create matrix, right? And now you can see while calling, I'm passing the first matrix, and here I'm calling the second matrix. So in this case, that matrix will be initialized here, right? So I'm just removing the duplication, right? And this is the logic which is used for doing the matrix addition. So this is the for loop which is accessing the rows. This is the for loop which is accessing the columns, right? Why I'm using 2 and 3 instead of 2 and 3. What I need to use here, I need to use rows, and here I need to use columns, right? So we should not hard coded the things here. So what I'm doing to here, I'm just looping the things. I'm fetching the element of the first matrix which stored in the I and j index position, adding with the matrix to I and j position. Whatever the result comes, that result I'm going to store inside this result matrix, and then I'm simply printing the value of the result matrix, right? Now let me run the application code, right? So I'm entering the row as 2, I'm entering the column as 3, entering the first element, I'm entering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2 into 6, entering the second element, I'm entering 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and you can see the sum of the two matrices is this. So 1 will be added with 4. 1 is added with 4, so the sum is going to be 5. That is going to store in the 0 and 0 location. So 2 is going to add with 5, 7 is the value that is going to store in the 0, 1 position, right? Row number 0 and column number 1, and so on. So is that clear? How this matrix addition perform? And once you understand this matrix addition, then you can easily implement the matrix multiplication, right? Understand or not, guys?
Understood.
Okay, let me copy this example and put it here. So instead of 2, 3, this is not required. I'm just moving these things and putting it here, right? Now once you understand
So,
the yeah, any question?
yeah, can you show that like you converted a piece of code into a method? Can you show it again?
Again, yeah, sure. This is the code that I want to convert into a method, right? So what you need to do is, so this is matrix 1. Suppose you find this code, you want to convert this to a method. Select the code first that you want to move or to a new methods. Once you select the code, so left click and you select right click. Once you right click, you will see one option, quick action and refactoring, right? Click on that option. Once you click on that option, you will see that here one option called extract method. Click on this extract method. It will create a method like this, new method, right? So here you can see rename new method, include comment, include strings, preview strings. Rename will update 2 references in one file, right? So instead of a new method, what I want to give, I want to give a new name. So I'm providing some method, right? And once you provide some method, just click enter. So you can see this is my method call statement, right? Because and that logic it will put inside a new method which is taking 3 parameters, row number, column number, and matrix. Right now, this code, instead of writing here, it will move that code to a new method and it will call that method from here. Clear?
Yeah, okay.
So once you do some practice, then you will know what is happening and how this is created, right? So now we are going to discuss the JAXed array, right? These are also basically 2-dimensional array that will also store the data in the form of rows and columns. But here in JAXed array, the column size will differ from row to row. So in this case, if I'm creating the row and column, so in this case, it means it's a JAXed array having 2 rows and 3 columns. But in this case, sorry, it's a rectangle array. In the case of a JAXed array, the column number is going to be vary from row to row. That means what? Now it means in the case of a JAXed array, the first row might be have 5 columns, while the second row contain 4 columns, while the third row contains 6 columns, while the fourth row may contain 2 columns. That means there is no guarantee. There is no guarantee the number of columns, right, for each row. If the column is going to be vary from row to row, right, then that array is said to be a rectangle array. Clear? Clear or not?
Yes.
Right. So in this case, say in our previous case, while creating a rectangle array, you need to specify the row number and column numbers. But in the case of a JAXed array, as the column size is going to vary from row to row, you do not need to specify the column size. right? Then what is the syntax? The syntax is this one. The syntax is this one, right? The syntax is this one. This is not the syntax. This is wrong. Right? You can see this is the syntax. Here I'm specifying the row size, but I'm not specifying the column size, right? Here I'm specifying the row size, but I'm not specifying the set. Directly you can initialize the jagged array using value, and you can also initialize like this, integer 40. That means there are going to be 4 rows, but what is the size of each row, right? How many columns are there in each row, that is not mentioned here. Then how you are going to mention? You are going to mention like this, ARR of 0, it is going to be new int 5. That means what? Now in the 0th position, right, for the 0 index position, for the 0th row, I'm going to have 5 columns. For the first row, I'm going to have 6 columns. For the second row, I'm going to have 4 columns. And in the third row, I'm going to have 5 columns, right? So this is how you need to create 2-dimensional jagged array. So in this case, in simple word, we can say that a jagged array is nothing but a combination of multiple one-dimensional array where each row is going to be a different one-dimensional array. See, in the case of a 2-dimensional array, we have used this syntax, right? But this is not going to be work in the case of, in the case of a jagged array, you have to use 2 different subscripts. So basically, it is going to be a jagged array whose size is going to be 4 rows. And what is the column size that I have not specified? That is going to be vary, right? How you are going to specify the column size? By using this position, next position, ARR of 0. ARR of 0 means this is the first row. And in first row, I want 5 columns. In the second row, I want 6 columns. In the third row, I want 4 columns. And in the fourth row, I want 5 columns. As you have specified the row size as 4, so the index position is going to be 0 to 3. Is that clear? And in the 0th row, right, or in the 0th index position row, I want 5 columns. So I'm initializing that row using a new array. This is a single dimensional array or not? Guys?
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
A jagged array is nothing but a collection of multiple different single dimensional array where each row is going to be pointing to a new single dimensional array. As it is pointing to a single dimensional array, the dimension may be going to vary. For this row, the dimension is 5. For this row, the dimension is going to vary. In this case, I am providing 6. In this row, I'm providing the dimension as 4. In this case, I'm providing the dimension as 5. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. But guys, remember, as this is a jagged array, you cannot print the element simply by using a for each loop. For each loop, you can print using, if you have a rectangle array, or if you have a one-dimensional array, using the for each loops, you can directly print. But as it is a jagged array, you cannot simply print, right? So how to print, how to set the values, that we are going to discuss now. Printing the values of a jagged array using the nested for loop. It will print the default value as we are not assigning any values to the array. Get length of 0, right? Get length of 0 will return the size of the rows, right? In this case, get length of 0. 0 means this is this value, right? It is going to return me the size of the rows, right? So what I'm doing, I'm using a for each for loop, and I'm looping through the I less than 4, because this get length property is going to return me the array row size, and in this case the row size is 4. So this loop will execute for I value 0 till I value 3. And this is the for loop that I am using to access the array element. So in this case, array of I. So in this case, array of I means what? What is the I value here currently? What is the I
Zero.
value? 0. So array of 0 dot length. What is the array of 0? This one. What is the length? Length is going to be 5. So in this case, this for I value 0, this internal loop will execute for 5 times. And in this case, it will access the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like this. Right? For let's once the execution completed, 5 completed, then for the once j value becomes 6, right? This condition is going to be held because the length is going to return me 5. And if you are becoming and this j value becomes 5, then this condition fails, so it will terminate the inner for loop. It will come outside. Once it come outside, then it will increase the I value by 1. So what will be the I value currently? I value becomes 1, right? And then it will come inside j, it will initialize j value with 0. Then it will get this array of I dot length. Array I value is 1, a of I dot a of 1 dot length. What is the length of a of 1?
6.
6.
That means this loop will execute for 6 times. Again, once it executes the inner for loop, then it will come here and it will increase the outer for loop value by 1. I value becomes 2. For this 2, what is the size of the array of 2 length is going to be 4. So this for loop is again going to be execute for 4 times, right? This is how the JAXed array element you can access. Right? So here I'm accessing the value. You can also set the value in this way only. Right? Now, if you are okay, now in this case, if you run this application, then I have not stored any value inside this array. So it is going to print the default value, which is in this case going to be 0. Now, I'm going to assign some value. Right? So what I'm doing, I'm assigning some value. So the same you can see the same for loop is here. But here I'm creating one variable number. I'm increasing the number variable by 1 and I'm storing that number variable in the array loop. Right? So this is how I'm assigning the values to the JAXed array. And this is how, see, you cannot simply print the values of an JAXed array by using this for each loop, because in this case, this array is going to return, it is not going to return the elements. So this array is nothing but it is a collection of multiple single dimensional array, right? That means if you want to access the element, you need that single dimensional array, not the JAXed array. So for that, what I'm going to do is, right, in this case, I'm looping through each row. And then from that row only I'm getting the element ARR of I value 0. ARR of 0 means this is the single dimensional array. And from this array, I'm fetching the data into this variable and printing the value. Understand?
Yes.
Right? And when I value becomes 2, right? This is ARR of 2. So ARR of 2 means pointing to this single dimensional array. So whatever value are there in that single dimensional array, that will become here and will be assigned to this X variable 1 by 1. But in this case, if you are trying to use this for loop, then this array, it is nothing but it is going to hold multiple array, right? Each array item will become here. And in this case, you will see it is going to print the array, right? System.int32. In this case, it is going to print, right? Okay, let me also show you this one, console.writeLine. I'm putting a new line, right? Now, let me run the application. See, the default value is 0. Then we initialize. Then we are printing the array element like this. And here you can see system.int32 array. So this for loop, what I am using here, it is returning system.int32 array, right? And that int32 array contains the element. That is what you need to print, right? Suppose in this case, okay, let me try this one. Suppose it's going to be war, right? Right. So here you can write like this. Right. So in this case, this is going to print the value. See, it is printing the value because this for loop will return individual array and this for loop will print the value of each individual array. Right? Clear or not?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is how, this is what your JAST array. Now the next, okay, any question from anyone related to this array concept? Because this is the last thing that we are going to discuss today. Advantages and disadvantages of array. Any question from anyone?
So one question, like you have used the different syntax for JAST array. No? Can we use the same thing for two-dimensional array also by giving the rows and columns in that?
Yeah, it's a two-dimensional array only. But if you are specifying the array size, right? Then, so in that case, you are specifying the array size. See, okay, let me show you one syntax. Integer. So in this case, you have to specify the size, and you have specified 3 and 5 means the number of rows is going to be 3, and each row is going to contain 5 element that is fixed. But you cannot because this is the syntax of your two-dimensional rectangle array. Here you are specifying explicitly that the size is 5. That means each row is going to contain 5 elements. And if each row is going to contain the same number of elements, then this is not a JAST array. It's a rectangle array. But if you want, that each row going to contain some different number of elements, then you cannot specify that size here, right? If you do not specify the size here, then you can specify the size using this approach. And this is JAST array. This is not possible using rectangle array. Because in a rectangle array, it is mandatory to specify the size. Right? So once you specify the size, then you cannot do like this. Understand what is the difference? In this case, each row is going to be the same size, that is 5. In this case, there are 4 rows, but what is the size of the row that I have not specified here, that you need to specify using this approach. And here, this is a one-dimensional array. This is another one-dimensional array. And this one-dimensional array is going to be stored in the 0th index position. I mean 0th row, this is first row, second row, this is third row, and this is your last row. Clear?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Any question from anyone? Okay, fine. So the last thing that we are going to discuss today is advantages and disadvantages of array. And what is the disadvantages and how we can overcome those disadvantages, that is what we are going to discuss. So the advantages of array are as follows. It is used to store similar type of multiple data items using a single name, right? If you are using array, then you can store only the similar type of data, right? If you are trying to store other type of data, then you will get some kind of exception, some kind of compilation error. See, in this case, you can look at this image. Here, I'm creating an integer array. I'm storing integer value, that is fine. But as soon as I try to store a string value, it is going to give me a compilation error. Because this value, what I am trying to store, is not the one it's supposed to be stored inside this variable. So inside this number array variable, it's supposed to be stored the data, which is going to be of type int, and you are trying to store some integer value. So it is going to give you the compilation error immediately. So using this array, you can store multiple values, right, data items using a single name. And you can see here, I can store multiple values. So I'm declaring this array with 3 means 3 integer values I can store inside this single name. When we can use array to implement other data structure, like if you learn data structure in your academics, right? There is something called the linked list, tree, graph, track, queues, right? All these things are implemented using the array concept. The two-dimensional array in C# are used to represent matrix, right? We have already seen the example of a matrix. So two-dimensional array is used to represent matrix, where it should have some rows and columns. It is going to store the data in the form of rows and columns. The array in C# are strongly typed. So in this case, the array is a strongly typed. Strongly typed means the array is created for the type you can only store the data member of that type only. If you are trying to store other type, then you will get compilation error. You can say this array is created using integer data type, means you can store only integer value. If you're trying to store other values, then you will get compilation error. And this is possible because this is a strongly typed tool, right? As the arrays are strongly typed, so we get two advantages. First advantage is it will be much better because boxing and unboxing is not happened. See, in this case, this array is integer. That means you can store only integer type value. There is no concept of boxing and unboxing will come into picture, right? So there is boxing and unboxing is not there, and we are not going to get any runtime error if you are storing some different kind of values. If you are storing some different kind of values, we will get compilation error. But if you are going with other collections like array list, then they are not strongly typed. There is boxing and unboxing, and there is a chance of getting runtime error. That is what we are going to discuss, right? See, I'm going to discuss this thing. So in this example, I'm not using array. Instead of array, I'm creating the collection by using the array list class. What is array list class? What is this add method? Everything we are going to discuss, but not now. So in this case, you can say I'm creating a collection of number array. I'm storing two numbers. Even I'm also storing a string value. And if I'm storing this string value, then I'm not getting compilation error. I'm writing a for each loop to print the numbers, right? And while I'm using a for each loop to print the number, at runtime, I will get the runtime error, right? At runtime, I will get the runtime error, right? See, and that error is going to tell you that invalid cast. It is not possible to convert that specific value pranay to integer, right? This is the exception. That is what we are getting. That is specified cast is not valid, invalid cast exception. But this invalid cast exception, what we are getting at runtime, that can be handled by the array at compilation time. If you are creating an array and while you are going to add a string value, at that time only it will going to give you the compilation error like this, right? Understand what is the advantages of using array? Array means they are strongly typed. They are strongly typed means you can store the data for the type of data that you want to be stored, right? For example, if you are creating an array of floating type, then you can store the floating type data only. You cannot store string, boolean, other type of data, right? And second thing, as arrays are strongly typed, right? The boxing and unboxing will not happen there, right? There is no need to convert the data to object type and again convert from object to the specific type. This things is not happening, right? And the second thing is that you will get a type mismatch error immediately if you're trying to store a different type of value inside the array, right? But this is the problem with array list collection. In array list, right, you can see you can store any type of values, as this array list is work on object data type, right? If this array is work on object data type, and if you go to the add method somewhere, you will see the add method, right? So it is working on object data type. As object data type, you can store 10, you can store 20, you can also store runner, right? As it is storing the data in the form of object, that means there is boxing and unboxing. Boxing and unboxing means what? Boxing and unboxing means performance issues, right? So these are the advantages of using array, but there is some limitation. What is the limitation? The array size is fixed. The array size is fixed, so we should know in advance how many elements are going to be stored in the array. Once the array is created, then we can never increase or decrease the size of the array, right? Suppose you are creating an array of size 10. That means maximum 10 elements you can store inside that array. If you are trying to store 15 elements, then this is not possible. If you are trying to store 15th element, then you will get, you created the array with size 10, means index position from 0 to 9. And if you trying to use the, as soon as you try to use the index position 10, you will get some error exception. That means you cannot store maximum more number of elements inside the array, right? Suppose you created an array of size 10. That means 20 bytes or 40 bytes based on the integer data type or based on the data type, it will allocate the memory. But out of the, you created the array with size 10, but you are only storing 2 elements. That means if the total size is 20 bytes, you are storing the data in 4 bytes. That means 16 bytes of memory is wasted or not? Wasted or not, guys?
Yes.
Right? So this is the problem. And even you cannot insert and delete an element in the middle of an array. Right? Suppose you are creating an array. That means index position is fixed. Right? And if index position is fixed means what? Okay, let me give you one example. Right? Suppose I'm creating an integer array with size, right? With size, okay, I'm creating an integer array with size 10. Size 10, right? What I'm trying to do, I'm creating an array. Array of 0 equals to 10, right? ARR of 1 equals to 20, right? ARR of 2 equals to 30. I have created this. Now my requirement is, okay, I created like this. Now my requirement is in the index position 2, I want to store 30 and this 40 should be moved to index position 2. This is not possible, right? This is not possible. If once you update this index position, right? Once you update this index position 2 with 30, that means this value will be replaced with 30. This value will not move to the next index position in the array. It will not automatically move to this index position 3. This is not possible in array. That means you cannot insert or delete an element from the middle of the array. For example, I'm having this one. I'm having this array, right? I'm having this array. So what I want is, I want to delete this array. But once, as soon as I delete this array, this index position 0, this index position 1, and this should becomes the next index position 2. This is not possible. Right? This is not possible. You cannot delete an array element like this. So there are some limitations. What are the limitations? First, the array size is fixed. You cannot increase and decrease. If you are creating an array, if you are trying to store more elements, you will get an exception. If you are creating a bigger array and if you are storing less number of elements, then there will be memory wastage. And second thing, it is not possible to insert and delete elements from the middle of the array. How we can overcome this problem? We can overcome this problem by using the collection framework. And that is what we are going to discuss in our next session. Is that clear? So before understanding collection framework, you need to understand these things. What is the array? What is two-dimensional array? How we are working with array? What are the advantages of using array? And what are the disadvantages of using array? And why? Because suppose you are attending one interview, then the interviewer might be ask you, we are already have the concept called array, then why we are going to use collection framework? Yes, we need to use collection framework because there are some limitations with the array. What is the limitation? The first limitation is the array size is fixed. Fixed means we have to know the array size in advance so that we can create the array. If you do not know, if we are creating a bigger array, if we are storing some less number of elements, then there is a waste of memory. That means we need some mechanisms, right? We need some mechanism where the size of the collection should be increased automatically once we add new elements, right? So once we add new element, if the size of the array is automatically increased, then that will resolve this problem. The array size is fixed. The fixed size array problem can be overcome by using a dynamic array. And dynamic array means this is the collection framework, right? And second problem is we cannot insert and delete items from the middle of an array, right? So this is not possible. But if you want to, suppose there are 5 employees in a collection, and out of 5 employees, you want to remove 1 employee from the collection, right? Then that is not possible using array, but that is possible using the collection framework. So these are the problems which we are facing with the arrays, and we can overcome this problem by using the collection framework. Again, the interviewer might be asking, Yes, I understand your point, but why we have different types of a collection framework? Why we are having non-generic collection? Why we are having generic collection? Right? Then when to use which collection framework? That is the next question that the interviewer might be asked you immediately, right? But that I'm not going to explain you right now why we are having different types of collection framework, why we are having non-generic collection, why we are having generic collection, what is the difference between them. That is what we are going to discuss step by step from tomorrow onward. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's it for today. Any question from anyone, they can ask me now. Because see, if you are not understanding this array concept, then understanding collection framework is going to be a difficult one, right? You should know what is this array and what are the advantages of using array, disadvantages of using array. See, in this case, I'm creating an integer array. So as soon as I'm trying to store a value of other than integer type, then it will give me some compilation error. See, in this case, I'm getting the compilation error immediately, but I'm not getting compilation error here because these are integer data type, right? But here you can see I'm not getting any compilation error. But in this case, what is the problem? The problem is I'm creating the array with size 3, right? And when I'm adding the fourth element, right? When I'm adding the fourth element, it will give me I'm using one index position which is not inside this array. So it will give me runtime error, right? It will give me runtime error. So we need some mechanism where it should give me the compilation error, but it should not give me the runtime error. This is what where we need to. This is the situation where we need to go for collection framework. So in this case, you can see this is the number array. Here I'm adding as many elements as I can. So as I goes on adding the element, the size of this collection is going to be increased. But in this case, this is going to give me some compilation. This is not going to give me compilation error. This is going to give me some runtime error. That means then we need to find some better solution, right? Better solution instead, the size should be increased automatically, but it should give me some compilation error if I'm trying to store other than this. Yes, that is possible. How? Let me show you these things for now. Right, so you can see I'm creating an integer array, right? So where I'm creating this integer list where I'm storing this integer numbers, but while I'm storing this string value, I'm getting the compilation error. Now this is the collection, right, which can automatically increase. The size is automatically increased as we add elements to the collection. But if I'm trying to store other than integer values, this is also going to give me some compilation error, right? And also this will give us the flexibility to add or to remove elements from the middle of the array, right? It will also add give you the option to add elements in between this 10 and 200, after 10, before 10, everything is possible, right? If you want to remove this element altogether, that is also possible, right? Those things we are going to discuss as we progress in this collection framework, right? Any question from anyone?
No, sir.
Okay, that's it for today. See you tomorrow, guys. Thank you for your time.